appreciate that you made the coffee because now you know my pain. Alex is not here, thankfully.
Yo, respect.
He's not here to criticize us.
What does he say when you make the coffee?
He just doesn't think it's good. I forget what he says. He says someone keeps fucking up the beans. We can't put that in because I swore.
Too late. It's on record. These are the best moments right here.
At this point, we have to get rid of the clean label on iTunes. That's what's going to have to happen.
Man. No, you can selectively add that little E, explicit.
If we just drop a lot of F-bombs on one particular episode.
Yeah.
Does beeping count? If you beep the swear words, will it still be clean?
Good call.
I don't know. Anyway. All right. Here's my first gulp.
Ew. That was gross.
This is fine. It's better than 7-Eleven coffee.
It looks like Coca-Cola.
It's better than 7-Eleven coffee. You did fine.
Mikey, thoughts on the coffee? We have a special guest, Mikey Scott.
All right, here we go. I'm usually the guy that gets the coffee and then drinks it like 10 minutes, 15 minutes after because it's too hot. So here we go.
I want honesty.
I mean, it's thick.
I told you.
It's a thick pot.
It's a thick coffee.
Yeah, there we go.
All right, Mikey, for people who don't know you, maybe you can introduce yourself. Where are you from?
Cool. So my name is Mikey Scott. I'm actually from Toronto, living in Vancouver for 18 years. Next year is a pivotal year because I lived in Toronto for 19. So I feel like I can actually say I'm from Vancouver.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So it's maybe half now.
That's it. That's life.
Is it time to move then?
Could
Spend
be.
the next 19 years somewhere else?
Could be. Just finished up a nice stint at a great company. So now I'm on a travel routine and was actually just in Bali with a bunch of the Stussy guys and now over here to spend some time with some friends and now head home.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that. I really wish I had the chance to go. I was just traveling, but actually not that I got invited. I'm adding myself into the equation. But yeah, maybe you can tell people about the whole experience.
Yeah, so every year people at Stussy bring together a bunch of different members of the tribe. So the tribe has like been built over 30 some odd years. And the idea is to just, have people celebrate a culture, come together. And this year was actually in Bali. So they had a whole bunch of people from music, everyone from Jules Gayton, who I used to work with at a former position, who's great, amazing DJ, all the way into Benji B, into Guillaume Berg, into the guys from No Vacancy. So kind of like a culture who's who when it comes to a great, opportunity just to put some music and some vibes into a great area. And they actually had a mini ramp on the side of a pool at a big resort, which was Potato Head.
Yeah, Potato Head, right?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I didn't even know there was a Potato Head here in Hong Kong.
Yeah, actually, there's a really, really cool music room they have that's kind of speakeasy, like where it's in the back and you have to walk through a bunch of corridors. It's really cool.
Was it your first time in Bali?
No, it's actually my third.
Oh.
But it was my second
Aspiring
time.
pro surfer.
Yeah, my second time getting sick. So
oh no, I'm sorry.
No, it was good. I had a whole week. So I got in the water, surfed, and then took in some culture and some music, and it was wicked. Took in some air conditioning, didn't get burnt. Not bad.
Great.
Yeah. What was it like to be amongst all these dudes that have had such an important role in defining in some way music culture, in many ways street culture?
Yeah, it was really cool because I didn't know that many people there. There was probably 40 some odd people there, and I had roots with maybe 15 of them. But it was great to be on the sidelines because I got to actually watch a bunch of people come together that don't, obviously get to spend a lot of time together. But I could just kind of feel like I was included in something special when I saw everyone just kind of greet themselves for the first time. And it was interesting because you just realize that there's different generations and there's always something that brings all these people together. And in this time it was music and it's also a brand. So having a brand with the kind of like, it definitely resonates Stussy with different generations. So I think seeing all those generations together and celebrating music and culture in a cool place, it's something special to be a part of.
Sounds like an amazing experience. And you're also talking amongst just us too about how people were busting out like vintage t-shirts, right?
Yeah.
What was that like to see sort of this whole lineage of archival stuff on people's backs nonetheless?
Yeah. I mean, there's not many brands that, have stayed relevant throughout like a set of time. You have like Massimo and Gotcha and all these brands that started about the same time as Stussy, but none of them are really here. So to see people with these Stussy shirts that are from 87, you know what I mean? From like way back, and they're kind of wearing them like a badge of honor. And truthfully, they are, you know, they survive the test of time, and it's a brand's duty to kind of maintain its relevance inside of a culture. So to see that, it's far and few between, especially with all the new brands that are starting up now, being on trend. And, you know, it takes something to create a trend versus just stay on it. What do you think?
I think it's interesting to me that they would gather all of these relevant in different ways people together without, you know, some kind of agenda. I guess like it seems very agendaless to me to just gather people to have a good time, to let them talk and share ideas and not be like, oh, we want you all together to create some kind of final product, or we're going to put out some like 3-minute video
This is
to like
exactly
advertise
what Mikey
this.
was saying on the way up.
Yeah, it's really cool because, I mean, as kind of like a disclaimer, I got the invite through a friend, and there's a direct, you know, relationship that a lot of these people have with Stussy. They either work with them or they've been a part of it in the past by being a retailer or anything like that. So my involvement was strictly just through a friend of mine who's, you know, making some key decisions at Stussy.
Yeah.
And with that being said, it's like, you have to have someone that really gets it to do these types of events. And with that being said, not many people get it. And I'm not like throwing it out there in a bad way. I'm just being honest to say that in the world of like everything being measurable, especially digitally, it's like they didn't gather people together to have a bunch of different people post on social media and this and that. There was nothing that was like, you have to do this if you come. So it was really cool to see that people are just sharing what they're involved in. And these people just happen to be at a level where other people follow them. And even if they're not, you know, there's people that came through that were friends of friends that, you know, I was able to spend some time with in great conversations, and lots of different people from lots of different brands who work at, you know, like Nike and whatnot. Like they come through because they were OG Stussy people. Yeah. So it's really interesting.
I think everything Mikey said is super on point, and Mikey's background is in marketing. So I think he has a very firm grasp of like where things were, where they're going, and what the future is. So, you know, I think it's really refreshing to see someone's very analytical take on sort of situations like that, because as we all know, like marketing in this current age and landscape, it's very, very difficult to the noise. And there's also such an easy way to quantify what the return on investment is. And it's nice to know that, hey, you know what, let's set ourselves a bar, maybe like, it's almost like an invisible bar where you're worrying less about what the metric to measure it is, so much as like, hey, this is the right thing to do. And I think there's not enough instances of let's just do something for the sake of building community versus let's just use this as a means to an end to ensure we get this many page views, this many views on YouTube, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's part of like a longer narrative. It seemed like that. So, I mean, just being involved in that and looking at it, and, you know, I'm a marketer's marketer. I love it. I eat it up. People have stories to tell. I listen. You know, I love the ability to kind of learn more, and it's a job to kind of learn, and it's also a job for the brand itself to kind of educate. So to kind of look at it from that lens, it's like there has to be something that comes out of spending time, you know, whether it's like an appreciation, whether it's an objection, there needs to be a reaction.
So Eugene, you were traveling as well?
Yes, I was on a retreat, which I won't go too much into detail because I have a story planned around it, but it was honestly pretty enlightening. And
How
it's
so?
weird. It's just, I think at this, the biggest takeaway I think is absolute certainty. What is certain in this world, right? And how open are you to being challenged on things you believe to be certain?
Okay.
So I'll leave it at that. Very philosophical, but.
All right. I'll pick your brain on this later.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Mikey's a special guest. He's going to come along for our Making It Up ride.
Eugene picks a topic. I pick a topic from the past week's cultural news, and we just talk about it, share our thoughts.
Not necessarily looking to arrive in an answer so much as just see what are the different layers that exist.
Yeah, it'll be good to have a guest on this because by this point, I think Eugene and I, we kind of know where we
know
stand
we're going to argue
on either side of an argument.
You guys know how to provoke each other.
We don't do so much of that.
I wish Mikey was on board for some of our brand discussions in the past.
It's too bad we didn't pick one of those.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so this week, I picked this. It's not really a new news item, but I thought this was so interesting, is that the U.S. Army develops video games under what they call the early synthetic prototyping program. And there's this one video game that's kind of their poster child for this program called Operation Overmatch. And it's very similar to most military like combat games, the way it works. Okay. But the reason they developed this is because they're seeking to change how the army spends its money and fights its wars through the data they gather in this video game. So how it works is that it's available online, like it's available on Steam, but it's actually only accessible to someone with a .mil account. So you have to have been in the military. And I don't know if it's like specifically soldiers or if you were working at an office, like at a desk, you could play it as well. So right now there's about 1,000 players and the aim is to get tens of thousands. The philosophy, which I'm really on board with, is engineers and scientists in their respective teams, they come up with these ideas for how to fight wars, how to develop weapons, but they don't actually get tested by soldiers until
combat.
Yeah, until combat or really happens. Further later stage of that kind of development of this new technology. And so what Operation Overmatch could provide is feedback from soldiers much earlier in the development stage of these weapons, which I think is something that really should have come along earlier. But I guess it's a little bit tricky to...
Yeah, because like when it comes to these measures, you're really at a point where you're testing in a vacuum.
Yeah.
And then the only real time it gets put into place is when it actually is needed. Hopefully anyways.
Yeah.
Right? It seems like you're also testing with the ability to retest. It's like you go play a video game, you can start it again. Yeah. When you go take that into the field, it's like there isn't really many regos. Like you can't restart.
Yeah. So that's actually one of the things I'm really interested in, because the pro of using a video game, using like a virtual simulation, is that you can retest a situation, right? Like the developers, they can change a parameter and that will affect how the players respond. But at the same time, because it's a video game, there's no guarantee that a player's actions really do reflect how they would behave in reality.
Let's use me as an example. I don't have a .mil account. I would just try all different things inside the video game. But if I knew I only had, obviously one life or one go at it, I'd be a lot more calculated.
Yeah.
I would almost be more calculated inside of a video game than I would be calculated inside real life, simply just because I feel like, I don't know, like the environment doesn't seem real. So I couldn't react based on like right away I'm in it. I would just feel like I would have to kind of know the map and look around and really be involved. Maybe I'm talking myself in a circle. I kind of feel like there's probably something there for learning and like the output of it, but I just don't know how that translates just to real life. I really don't.
There's so many variables that as much as you want to bake into a game, it's not there yet. But I guess at the end of the day, it's hard to measure something now versus where it could go.
I think part of what's going to come down to is how the data is analyzed. I think just being able to collect that data is interesting because I don't know fully how it works, but it says that the game monitors all of the player actions. So it's all logged, I assume, like under what situation you used what weapon and to what degree. But then when it comes to analysis, I guess it feels like you'd have to take it with a grain of salt, because the way someone approaches a video game, like you said, is like not going to be how you approach real life.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how you exactly parse those things. But that is interesting to me, the whole virtual vs real life reaction. But the main reason I picked this was because I'm interested in how technology is able to cut down on development time or able to finesse development time. And I also kind of thought of us as MAEKAN at how much time we've spent on like the website product without being able to like quickly iterate.
It kind of reminds me of how like there's like a airline simulator, but this is just like military based.
What's the airline simulator?
Well, like how people go into like a airplane school or their education to actually fly these large planes, and they have these simulation flights.
Like land on like specific runways.
Yeah. I think that's like right where my mind goes. It's like completely beneficial, because there's scenarios that they can place these people in and see what happens. But I think of that as more of like a training, and it trains the person. I don't see that. I don't really know what people get from that based on the behavior of people and how they're going to design the aircraft versus just the training and how it works with like You go into the situation, they put you in crazy weather, you can weather the storm,
Right.
bang, you get a check mark, versus them going and changing the way airplanes are based on how people are interacting with it. So I think there's something there for these simulations. And what you just kind of brought up there was like, it's kind of flipping my mind thinking that there's this environment and they want to see how people react inside of it without like a desired outcome of like, other than complete a mission.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, thinking about the airplane example, it'd be interesting if you had a simulation of the entire, like boarding a flight process, because I think that could be fine tuned. I mean, I'm not a pilot, but I ride a lot of planes, and I think the whole experience of like
they've gone and done research on this.
Have they?
They're like the most optimal way. We're currently not in the most optimal way of, I think, boarding a plane. I couldn't tell you exactly what it was, but I recall reading something.
But it would be interesting if you could get, because the great thing about video game is you can get thousands of people to like, test a thing and like abuse it and, use it in different ways that you don't expect. So if you could get them to do like, I mean, I don't know why anyone would do this, but to go through a virtual boarding a plane experience to find out.
Yeah. I mean, what's stopping, a game maker from partnering with, the military?
Yeah.
And creating something where it basically becomes a research tool. It's transparently known that it's a research tool.
Yeah. It's so interesting actually, because I read a lot about video games. I don't usually play like first person shooters, but Overwatch is really popular.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was funny that this game's name is really similar, right? Like this is Overmatch, and Overwatch is super popular. So could not that have happened where there's already this fully developed video game that's very popular? I don't know, the US Army for security reasons.
They just need to get in there on the, what is it, Counter-Strike?
Yeah.
That's the one where it's like, you have unmanned pieces of machinery and you have these kids that are sitting behind a computer who are just ripping like 24/7 being inside there. So I got involved with it for a little bit and then I was like, whoa, like where did 8 hours just go? I gotta get out of here, And then I went skateboarding and snowboarding. But I think the ability for scenarios to get played out in different ways, like I don't have a video game console simply because I know if I have that console, like I'm going to spend a lot of time on there.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to get outside a bit more.
Actually, I was actually also trying to think of a way this topic would be interesting to Eugene. So I was going to mention FIFA. I don't know if you play.
I was like NBA 2K guy, but like FIFA, I have friends that actually work at EA.
Okay.
So the whole development of the game and watching it and being involved from like a peripheral of the things that they're spending all this time on. And then looking at Eugene and his infatuation with soccer is like pretty awesome.
Well, I was just wondering, like,
I was so upset yesterday.
Is it even possible that, I mean, I don't know, because the game mimics real life players, right? Is it possible that you as a video game player can use the team in a way that would be different from how the team is actually used? Yeah. And would that data be interesting to a team owner? I don't know.
So basically you're saying that how a team lines up in real life could be manipulated to be played differently in FIFA. And could that information be relevant in real life? So what's interesting is that to kind of continue the video game narrative, Football Manager, which is a management game based around like, you take on a team and you don't actually play in an action mode. You're basically controlling the transfers, who you're buying, the economic side, the financial side.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, people have actually used that to help scout and predict who the next star is because there's such a massive network of people that are doing the research.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
And
you're just harning, this massive video game database for your real life benefit.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. And also to that point, Football Manager recently announced that now players can also come out as being homosexual, which is
in the game.
Yeah, like because it's trying to mimic reality. And like, although football's so highly guarded, where you don't really have a lot of players coming out, they just included that feature.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. Another side note: I am actually in Football Manager 2006.
What do you mean? You've been playing for 11 years?
No, I'm like a player in it.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Someone who plays Football
Virtual
Manager, please
Eugene.
screen cap
I think it was
this for me.
2006 or 2007.
So with that, I had heard that there's actually teams that are having video game players that represent their teams online in these types of games. So like you would have a physical team. Now this is maybe, football as in soccer.
Yeah.
That would have like pick any team, like name a team.
I think what you're getting at is what happens is in those instances is like an actual club team, like, well, let's say West Ham United.
Sure.
They'll have an esports team.
Yes, exactly.
That's, I think, what you're getting at, right?
Yeah, that's it. That's where like now you have these physical sports with this representation of people in a room playing that team and battling other teams. So you have like a virtual team of really established players. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen the stuff on Vice that floats around on the video game kind of championships and whatnot, and the types of games that they're playing and how it actually results in like full on teams that train and run plays together. And now that actually exists in sport, and it's actually being embraced by the teams themselves.
Yeah.
That's so...
I can definitely say that when you play FIFA enough, there are certain things you can take away and apply into the real world. Believe it or not.
If you play football as well as play FIFA.
Elphick mentioned it, and I believe him because I see it too. It's like when you have this relative bird's eye view of the game, and hey, you know what? There's certain instances that are successful tactically. There's no reason why that doesn't work. Maybe not 100%.
Right.
Even if it's 75% applicable, you can apply that into the real world.
I mean, that's the same idea as what Mikey was saying about the airplane simulator being a training tool. So in this case, FIFA as training tool.
So I guess the missing piece there is the club using this information.
Yeah.
Which brings the conversation totally full circle right back to the military side of people play these types of first person shooter games, I'm 37. My game was like the last one that I really got into that I enjoyed was, like Halo or something, like something just mission based.
Yeah.
It was first person. You'd run around, shoot things. And then I don't know if Xbox is playing on how I do that and developing new levels on it, but it's definitely interesting. This is the virtual side
they
of
have
like
to
something.
use it because they're probably looking at how you're engaging. What are things that you personally resonate to, and like, oh, you know what, let's just say hypothetically, in this multiplayer game, 97% of players are playing this type of match, and they probably just like expand on that.
Though, I mean, FIFA would have to make the data available to actual clubs.
Yeah, or they could just. What I imagine they could do is it could be a whole nother side business where you can license out information.
Oh.
Right.
Now we're going full circle into like Facebook here. Premium. We're going to start giving away games so they can get the data.
I don't want to let this subject slide without mentioning Ender's Game. Have either of you read that book?
No, what's that?
Okay, so Ender's Game is...
Sharice is really good for random stuff that I'm not put onto. It's just a different world.
Here's some.
It's a different world. It's a different world that you and I inhabit. So Ender's Game was published in 1985, and it's written by Orson Scott Card. And it's kind of a young adult fiction book, but it's both of you would still enjoy it, I believe, right now. And the entire premise is that, am I giving anything away? I don't think so. Anyway, it's from 1985. So there's no spoiler alerts on this anymore. Basically, children run the military through playing virtual military games, and they don't realize that their simulations are the real thing. That's the entire premise of the book. So the wars of this like dystopic future world are being fought by like 11 to 14-year-olds, and the kids don't know it, essentially. But they're really, really good at what they think is a game. Yeah.
I mean, there you go. If it comes in an audiobook, I'm in. Otherwise, I'm going to have to reread the same page like 30 times and falling asleep.
No, I think it's available.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Perfect. Cool. Is Second World still a thing?
Is it Second Life?
Second Life? Yeah. Is that still a thing?
Didn't it shut down? I'm going to look it up.
Weren't like people pouring money into that and stuff?
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe that's like next podcast one day, but all this talk of like things being virtual versus being real? I don't know.
These are my favorite kinds of topics. Eugene can tell you I pick this stuff all the time. No, Second Life is still around.
Okay.
Second Life,
I think it was too big to fail.
launched in 2003, has over 1 million users.
But like people are putting money in. I remember there was
Yeah.
brands like American Apparel having stores and Gap
Yeah.
having stores. And that was like, free, but then you could just like put money into this virtual thing. It's like pre-Bitcoin craziness.
I'm so fascinated by this kind of stuff because I'm interested in whether people replicate their real behavior in virtual worlds or whether they use virtual worlds as,
Escape.
or a way to express themselves in a different way.
This is going to go big.
Yeah.
This is like a bigger topic now.
It is.
You guys want your own podcast? I'll give it to you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, this is like a social media kind of go here.
Yeah.
All right. We'll save it for another time.
Sounds good.
Hey, Mikey, you're welcome back anytime.
All right, sounds
You
good.
passed the test.
Just a plane ticket away.
So my subject this week is Metro cards with Barbara Kruger art are coming to New York City. So starting November 1st, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, aka the MTA, will release 50,000 limited edition Metro cards with Kruger's question on the back. So these cards are available at 4 different stations around New York City. They align with some site-specific work Mrs. Kruger is creating for the Performa Biennial. And the designs include one that features a series of questions: who is healed, who is housed, who is silent, who speaks. And the second version is whose hopes, whose fears, whose values, whose justice. Kruger herself, she's excited about the possibility because subway cards can be widely dispersed and distributed and will be available to a varied mix of riders. And previous limited edition cards include the 2015 All-Star Game and one super hyped one with Supreme, who oddly enough bears a resemblance to Kruger's own artwork. I think there's a little bit of controversy there in terms of...
I think she herself does not mind, but it's possible that it was a direct.
It's just the red and white. That's it. Is that like the biggest? Or the
Yeah.
font?
I think it's a font. Oh, I mean, it's quite similar.
It's quite similar, but I think they've both established
Moved on.
themselves separately.
Yeah.
from
Well,
the similarity.
one's a brand and one's a
Artist,
person.
yeah.
Yeah.
So this is another interesting thing too, because there's talks that in the future, the Metro cards themselves might be phased out. So the actual topic itself here about Kruger and Metro cards wasn't the exact reason why I wanted to talk about this. My actual interest is, what does it mean when you have these relatively affordable opportunities to present art to, as she mentioned, a varied mix of people? You know, these are people that might never really consider art, but now, hey, you know what, this is different than my usual, you know, my Metro card.
Yeah.
You know, and I like it when things like this enter a space where it's kind of like, how do you put it? It's kind of like street art in a way, but it's also tangible. I can
Mhm.
take this, I can,
It's
if
a
I
product.
really want, exactly.
Yeah.
I could take this, I could frame it. Actually, it would look kind of cool if you had just a small frame of like a
Yeah.
Metro card. But yeah, I actually want to start this question pointed at you, Mikey. What value do you think things like this have in the world where art is being put into the hands of people that aren't necessarily looking for it?
I think the first thought that comes to my mind is maybe other areas where this starts to exist. You know, I mean, the Metro card one is kind of hot right now, especially just in my mind, just simply because of it's very focused inside of New York, and it's like
Mhm.
New York and Metro and like subway is like very, you know, like I'm like a New Yorker. I'm on the subway. I'm going to generalize that simply just because I don't see it happening many other places.
Yeah.
So if you look at other areas where this has happened, I can't really think of the exact artist, but maybe like stamps or, you know, special editions, versions of those. Or I think it actually represents like a time period more than it does just the art itself. And with your discussion of, you know, how to keep these things actually relevant, I think it's a question of like, they're just trying to bring relevance to some of these different things like a Metro card. Like why is it that they're talking about phasing it out, yet there's these types of efforts on these things as like a last ditch, or like a, no, this is important, or no, this is now a vehicle for something that's more than just take your ride. It's like a collectible moment for something that is very culturally relevant. And I think that inside that, there's not much more that I would take away from it other than just, public art being given to the mass is something that New York is completely known for, all the way back to Keith Haring. And having, the last job that I was at, we did a licensing project with him, which was really cool because I got to dig into the archives, and it was like understanding how that worked in the subway culture and art. That's like a direct, it's like a link, especially within New York. So I'm curious as to this happening in other places of the world and doing it outside of, like you could have like a token, or you could have like an octopus card here done by someone.
They've done it periodically, but the difference is that since the MetroCard is on paper, right, that makes it a little bit
plastic paper.
Oh, is it?
It's not paper per se, but it is disposable. That's what you mean.
Yeah, like the octopus card here in Hong Kong isn't disposable, is I guess what I'm trying to say. Well, wait.
I wanted to.
They do have.
Before we go on to talk about Hong Kong examples, this struck me as well about this news item is that the MTA itself, like New York in general, is good at public art, but also the MTA is surprisingly good at art because they're so rubbish at, their actual train systems. But the art itself, they have sculptures in stations and mosaics in almost all their stations that were explicitly commissioned by artists or in collaboration with different people. And even the buskers that you find at some stations are MTA approved. So weirdly, like there are many things that are not great about the MTA, but the public art, really generous of the MTA actually to infuse art into places that we have to be in. You know, it's incidental that we get to encounter art on our train journeys. And the MTR here in Hong Kong is rubbish at it because we're on the MTR all the time, but all we get is ads everywhere on every surface.
Like I do like the fact that this whole project is very pedestrian, very accessible, right? And as you mentioned, like the subway system in big cities is the one remaining place where we interact with people of all walks of life, where it's very easy for us to just remove ourselves and hang out in certain pockets, whether it's online, whether it's in real life.
In Vancouver, we have like all the mailboxes are done by different artists.
Oh, that's cool.
There's I guess some stuff down on Granville Island, which is like a little small market area where those guys from, I think this is Latin America, I'm not too sure where it is, but they've done some public art on like grain elevators. And I see this piece that's happening inside of the MTA. It actually exists in other areas where you have paid versions of it, where you have brands that are buying the front page of newspapers as ads.
Yeah.
You have hotels that sell the keys during key times of the year to a brand, like at a trade show. It'll be like your hotel key. You'll look down at it and it'll be like promoting a weekend concert or something, and you're staying in Vegas. But then the art side of it, I think is very interesting because you have something that is not overtly promotion of something that's like you feel too bad about. Somehow it bridges being collectible.
Yeah.
Somehow, when in reality it's probably something in the background of like the MTA, specifically on this New York example, doing something to maintain relevance or to exercise a vehicle of like public art, but they're partnering with an artist. So there's something there where it's like, you don't know where the commercial side is, but you can see the value for the artist and you can see the value for the MTA. You just don't know which side is pushing it. Was it the artist that came and said, hey, I want to do this. Here's what I'm thinking. Or was it the MTA going, oh, okay, we got to do something here. Let's like, how did this opportunity arise? That's the question I have from this. Not so much of like the value. I think the value is cool.
Yeah. I was also thinking that too. Is like the stuff that Kruger mentions it's a little bit rooted in politics because they're inspired by previous pieces she had done. One was in response to Dan Quayle, and I think it's something to do with his vice presidential run and his family and a commentary on family values. So it's kind of entering this weird space where it could go two ways, or it could also not, right? It could be like, political motives, or just it's a very visible piece of real estate, however small it is. And it's also susceptible to being bought, as you mentioned. Like, what's stopping Coca-Cola from buying a spot on the back?
Totally.
Right? And
Totally.
is it wrong? Is it bad? Like, I'm wondering, because like if they were to buy it, but then however millions of dollars they would get for it, they could filter it back into some other project.
Yeah. What's it a vehicle for?
Exactly.
Because I remember, like the onset of of advertising in a washroom. I was like, what? This used to be like such like a safe place. Now I just go to the washroom and I'm just getting inundated with ads again. And I'm like, okay, well, it's hard to escape an ad. As a male, you're standing up and you're going to the washroom looking, a mere 10 inches from a wall, and you're just got an ad blasted in your face. It's like, what about that is normal? Well, it's just an added revenue stream for someone else who's just trying to maximize some profit. And it's valuable on both sides of the equation for the club, the mall, or for the brand itself. It's just more of like, not too sure what it's trying to accomplish other than impression.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, so I don't know if this provides more information on how this happened, but the New York Times article said it's in conjunction with the Performa Biennial, which is taking place in New York this month. So the first 3 weeks of November. And on their site, it's described as the biennial provides an extraordinary and very, very public platform for showing the essential role of art in society. Through live performance, we touch people directly, change their minds, and introduce them viscerally to the complicated emotional and aesthetic expressions of artists responding to the world in which we live today. So I think if you looked into their mission, like their agenda, there is some level of aspiring for public education, or I don't know if education shows like my bias, but just like they are trying to say something. They're like trying to make a statement, or Ms. Kruger is trying to make a statement with the Metro cards. That's not just, this is a collectible art item, but these are ideas that I have that I want people to be aware of.
That's the code. That's the code to crack into these types of, places where branding can be had versus just like a typical piece. Like you now as an artist able to have a moment where you're able to narrate, to a larger audience than just like a paid audience at a museum.
Yeah, there's definitely a sense of provocation with the pieces she's put out there. And I think that is, at the end of the day, good art at the very least should have some form of that.
It's so interesting to think. I'm still thinking about how the same thing could be applied anywhere else in the world, because the Metro card is, you have to purchase it. There's no octopus version of the Metro card. And the only other thing I could think of for now where it's like you need to receive this thing and can't avoid it is receipts. I don't know if maybe there are some artists out there who've already done that, but it'd be interesting as well if an artist got together with like Starbucks and said, can I put some kind of black and white art at the bottom of all of your receipts? And I don't know, that'd be really interesting to me as well, because you would encounter a lot of customers who aren't even aware of this artist or looking for an art piece. And it's like, oh, what is this?
Yeah, the element of surprise, or the element of like the Metro card seems very natural. You might just, buy your token, or you might buy your ride. You might look down and go, oh, like maybe I got to buy another one of these. I kind of want to keep this one.
Yeah.
So maybe there's like something on that where there's a permanence that comes from something that's very like disposable. Yeah. And in Toronto, where I grew up, it was like the TTC was just tokens.
Yeah.
And then it was just paper transfers that were like on just the worst type of paper, with like ink all over your hands, and you just wanted to use it really quick and get rid of it. That was like the piece that I got from it. But these types of, maybe installation or maybe moment, that part there is like, it seems less disposable, which is kind of cool.
Do you guys own any art items that are similar to this?
No, I'm like famous for going to places and buying postcards.
Okay.
And buying a bunch of different postcards and then just reframing them as like a moment that like I create. I don't have enough money to go buy all the big pieces of art, so I'll just make my own.
Well, that's why I said like this, like as in somehow you've encountered affordable art or incidentally came across affordable art. No?
I'm not a big art collector.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by it, but I don't really have the ability to go like, my mind doesn't work like if I buy this now, this guy's onto something. I don't have the foresight for art. So I'm usually the guy that goes to the
desire.
Yeah. I'm like the guy that goes to a museum and looks around and then would also go to an art show and look around. You know, I can't really spot the difference between like, oh, this guy's going to be something. I should buy something here and then know that in 10 years, if this continues, it's going to be worth money. You know, like the whole art world is very fascinating because, you know, like the Damien Hirst and all these things, like my mind just goes to this Metro card. You know, why wouldn't there be something for the Tube with like a Damien Hirst piece? Like, why wouldn't there be something like that? But I'm not too sure. But I truthfully believe that there's like the ability for, how do I put it? It's like the ability for like an artist just to have a vehicle, you know, where they can be heard. Because I'm sure that the lady that's doing this doesn't have the craziest social media following. There isn't like, they haven't like built themselves up that way. And if that's the new way to get in front of people, then why don't you just go backdoor and just go analog into these things that are just going to be a part of people's lives, regardless of social media, regardless of Wi-Fi, regardless of cell phone, regardless of screen. Yeah, it's like, it's a physical thing.
And it's unavoidable, as you mentioned. If you're going to take the subway, I mean, mind you, it's only in a select few stations, but
yeah, and only 50,000.
There's no algorithm at play here.
So
yeah, it's random.
Yeah. So there's something of that, of like discovery, a sense of discovery of like, I'm going to go, like I, you know, there's a couple of us at a table talking about this thing that's happening on the other side of the world, you know? So there's something where it would be really cool to own a piece of this moment. I'm just not too sure what the hell I'd do with it after. I'd be like, yeah, I got one. Then I'd be like, oh, you know,
straight to eBay.
It's a resale.
No, that's so sad.
Or is it just reality?
Gosh, that's a sad note to end on.
Oh man, oops. That's
no. It's okay. That's about like 60% of our podcast.
Oh, there you go. All right.
It's not one of those optimistic ones.
Well, all the Supreme stuff was like very, 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 I mean, it wasn't art. You know, it was like a straight product.
Yeah.
And you saw people who were just like using it. And people were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're using that. Like, that's like a Supreme one.
Yeah.
And then there's people selling them again. But in reality, it's like $1.50 or a $5 card.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's bigger than $5, which I think this card, this MTA, you know, way to go use something that people have to use regardless. There's going to be people that use it, throw it away.
Exactly.
Other people that get it, hold on to it. And regardless, it has the value and the usage, which is to take you from A to B.
Just interesting what different people think of as collectible.
Yeah. It's something where it's like, once again, it's a moment. Yeah. It's like very personal. So maybe that's what this is. Maybe it's something that's like very personal. If you vibe with this artist, then you're going to be quite drawn to it. Or if you do some research and you're connected in a way where I don't know the entire way that this has actually been broadcasted. I ran through it on like 3 or 4 sites a couple days ago, and I just kept getting inundated with it. So I tried to learn a bit more, but I'm sure that there's, you know, larger news that is broadcasting this. So it's probably got a pretty wide net, and it's probably accomplishing the goal, which was to, you know, either question or have some sort of a political stance.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it's accomplishing it regardless if it's physical or not. People are getting it.
Yeah. And I think that just returns back to the purpose of art and is it successful? Because I mean, at the end of the day, this is not really a means to an end for anything, right? It's accessible.
So if you're able to have an impact, maybe that's the currency of like good art.
Should we end it off there?
Yeah. I think that's a good place to
turn it back around.
Boom.
Made it positive.
Boom. All right.
I think that's a good place to end things for the day. If you are interested in hearing more about MAEKAN, our community, and our membership opportunities, you can check us out at maekan.com, where there are lots of stories available to listen on the sights and sounds of creative culture.
And if you like this podcast, and I've said it before, if you hate this podcast, please rate us accordingly. I think the feedback is helpful.
Yep. Give us a review, share this episode. Even if you hate it, you should share it and
Or
tell your friends why you hated it.
probably not. I don't think that's going to happen. They probably haven't made it this far.
Well, maybe they just listened to this episode.
Maybe.
Anyway,
I'm Mikey,
I'm Charisse.
I'm Eugene.
and this is Making It Up.